Stormgate developer Frost Giant Studios is asking for a do-over. The game has been in early access for several months now, and the game's reception has not been good. It launched to poor reviews, and the active player numbers have crashed to the floor. Still, the devs at Frost Giant have hope for the game. They've been working hard on several major fixes for a couple key parts of the game, with the hopes that these improvements can entice players to come back. Will that be enough to save the game? Well, let's talk about it. Frost Giant is an indie studio made up of Blizzard veterans who worked on some of the greatest real-time strategy titles ever, Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2. They took their knowledge from working on those games and gave us Stormgate, a game that is billed as the spiritual successor to those iconic RTSs. While other new entries in the genre have sought to pare down some of the more difficult traditional base building elements in an effort to court a larger audience, Stormgate seeks to stay more pure and pay homage to its Blizzard RTS lineage. This is a mission statement that has earned the game a large following. Unfortunately, as we have seen, it hasn't been smooth sailing for the title. Frost Giant made some mistakes in their efforts to release it to the public as soon as possible. Stormgate game director Tim Campbell eloquently explains the situation in a blog post that released on the game's website in December.
Those of you who have been following our journey already know that the past few months have been incredibly challenging for us, though they've also been deeply enlightening. We know that our early access launch didn't meet your expectations, or ours. We felt pressure to get the game into players' hands, but doing so before the game could make a positive first impression was the wrong move. Key areas of the game needed significantly more time to develop, and we released far too early. That mistake is on us, and we regret it. While this is a tough lesson, we've taken it to heart. Going forward, we need to give things more time to cook. Unfortunately, there's no save and reload in real life, and ever since we kicked off early access, we've been working hard to figure out our best path forward. Today, our team remains committed to delivering a Stormgate experience worthy of your time and passion. We believe that, despite the rocky start, we can still achieve something great.
Along with this mea culpa, we received a lot of good news. Exciting new visual and gameplay redesigns, particularly around the much maligned Infernal faction. A completely revamped campaign with story improvements that should address some of the major concerns fans have with it, and further refinements to 1v1 gameplay, especially around the divisive creep camps, are all coming throughout this year. The most reassuring news for fans? The studio received a fresh round of venture capital funding, which should help the team get across the finish line, in spite of floundering out the gate. Will these big improvements and good news be enough for Stormgate's do-over to win players over? I think there's a good chance they will, as long as Frost Giant remembers something crucial. While there's a lot about Stormgate that needs improvement, the main thing preventing RTS fans from playing is that the gameplay itself hasn't hooked them. Until that happens, they would rather keep playing StarCraft 2 or other titles that they already enjoy. The game can never succeed until it wins those people over, and to do that, the gameplay will need to feel fresh and exciting. A good gameplay hook is defined by how fresh and exciting it is. I'm convinced that only when Stormgate has a strong hook to build its gameplay around will it become a phenomenon. The reason I made this video is that I have an idea that I think would give Stormgate that hook, so I'm sharing it in the hopes that it might inspire the developers while they're revamping the game. The developer of indie darling Crypto the Necrodancer, Brace Yourselves Games, put out a pair of videos back in 2020 explaining all about the different types of hooks, how to recognize them, how to use them, and more. The definitions and examples found within are so helpful that I want to use them here to help make my point. They're excellent watches though, and you should check them out after this video for way more detail on the concepts. To start, let's establish what a hook actually is.
A hook is a concept. It's something about your game that gets stuck in people's heads. Examples of hooks are dating your weapons, unique ways of controlling time, a gun that shoots portals instead of bullets, or even a dungeon crawler where you move to the beat of the music. A hook is something that makes your game stand out. It makes people remember your game. It makes people talk about your game with others. But what if your game idea is in a genre that is less viable? Maybe fans of that genre just play the same game forever without switching, so they may be less likely to try yours. If that's the case, then you need a very powerful hook to give you the best possible chance of capturing a large share of that audience.
The video has explained that hooks are a great way to make your game stand out over the competition, and that you need to consider the market you release your game into. The line about fans of that genre playing the same game forever without switching describes the RTS genre to a T. New RTS games notoriously have a tough time in the genre, because fans of, say, StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3, or Age of Empires have spent a lot of time mastering the strategies within those games. They're generally happy with them, and not in a hurry to leave them behind. So, hypothetically, what if we released Stormgate to early access without a strong gameplay hook, and without much that makes it more appealing than what existed before? That might be a recipe for the game to be poorly received. What's done is done, but now that Frost Giant is in rework mode, they need to be thinking about hooks, and whether Stormgate gets stuck in people's heads. But what sort of hooks should they add?
First, a hook needs to be surprising or unique in some way. And second, a hook needs to be something that your game's target audience would find desirable. Now there are two types of hooks, pre-play hooks and post-play hooks. A pre-play hook is something that takes effect before people have even played your game. A post-play hook is something that takes effect after people have played your game. It's something about the game itself that gets them talking.
Let's look at a game that's a perfect example of having both great pre-play hooks and post-play hooks. Super Smash Bros. What is a pre-play hook? The Nintendo characters crossing over in a fighting game. That's the obvious one. But Smash Bros. Wouldn't be the massive franchise it is if it didn't also have a really strong post-play hook. The innovative and approachable King of the Hill based combat. Super Smash Bros. Probably would have been popular if it was simply a clone of Street Fighter with Nintendo characters. That formula worked pretty well for the Marvel vs. Capcom series. But because series creator Masahiro Sakurai is a visionary, that game offered something wholly new and different from any fighting game that had ever existed before. And that catapulted the series into becoming a flagship title for Nintendo. The pre-play hook made Smash Bros. Popular. The post-play hook made it legendary. Stormgate also has a very strong pre-play hook. It's the heir apparent to the Blizzard RTS throne. It promises a game like StarCraft 2, but with continued development. Frost Giant understands this well. It was one of the main drivers that helped them get funding, and is evident in the wild success of their Kickstarter and strong early access launch week numbers.
Hell, it's about time.
But a pre-play hook only helps a game get to the starting line. It will bring players in, but will it keep them playing? What if your game is free to play, and you need to keep players coming back for the long-term success of that game? That's the importance of a strong post-play hook. Without one, players may come check out the game, and they might even enjoy what they play, but you're not as likely to keep them around long-term. The evidence that Stormgate doesn't currently have a post-play hook is in the numbers. If the game was hooking players, we'd see many more playing currently, even in its unfinished state. Okay, so what about the upcoming changes? Will those give Stormgate that post-play hook? Maybe, but a lot of those changes are more geared towards refining the anchors that the game already has.
You also need solid anchors. An anchor is something familiar about the genre, and you need anchors as well as hooks if your game is going to sell well. You want your game to contain many desirable things: great graphics, audio, game feel, etc., as well as most of the expected genre tropes.
So anything that your audience expects from your game, that's an anchor. A hook only applies if it's unique to your game and surprising. Based on that, let's analyze whether upcoming Stormgate changes can work as a hook. The factions. New factions to play are refreshing after years of StarCraft 2, and Stormgate has really pushed the boundary with a few of theirs, particularly the Celestial Armada. However, because unique factions have become an expectation for a new RTS, I don't think you can make one surprising or unique enough to count as the hook. That's why, although the new Infernal redesign is great, and it's important, it's not a hook. It's simply bringing Infernal more in line with player expectations, which makes it belong to the anchor category. Campaign. Thank goodness the campaign is being reworked. It was desperately needed. This still doesn't count as a hook for the same reason that new factions don't, however. It's another anchor that is important to get right, but it's not a new or unique feature. Team Mayhem. Team Mayhem is Stormgate's upcoming 3v3 team mode. This mode is an interesting blend of RTS and MOBA gameplay, with heroes brought into the mix and a core structure that each team must destroy for victory. It's designed to be a super casual way to enjoy RTS gameplay, with each faction given only a few units they can build and simplified macro mechanics. I think more than anybody else, Frost Giant themselves consider this to be Stormgate's hook. In one of his answers in the December Ask Me Anything, Tim Campbell said this when asked about cool or innovative ideas coming to Stormgate.
I'm particularly excited about our upcoming 3v3 Team Mayhem mode. It's a departure from traditional RTS, and we're having a lot of fun with it in our internal playtests. In some ways, it could be compared to a MOBA, teams of heroes working to destroy one strategic structure, but it still retains resource collection and armies from RTS, though those have both been simplified to some extent. We look forward to sharing more as we get further along with the mode.
For what it's worth, what they've shown us in the development blog posts and in interviews has certainly been new and interesting, and I can't wait until they've developed it enough that it's available for the public to try. So yes, Team Mayhem is surprising and unique, and it's something that can help Stormgate stand out. Those are the qualities of a good hook, assuming it lives up to the hype, so why don't I think this counts? Team Mayhem is only one of the core modes available in Stormgate, but there are also modes for 1v1, co-op, campaign, and eventually custom games thanks to the map editor. If only one of those modes is surprising and unique, I'm not convinced it will be enough to keep people playing long term. You need all of the game modes to be interesting enough, so that a player can try out new game modes and still enjoy themselves, even if it's not their preferred way to play. Additionally, any competitive community that may be drawn to this game is more likely to gravitate towards a mode that has a deeper pool of strategies and tactics available. And with a paring down of Team Mayhem, that's unlikely to be a mode they'd take very seriously. For those reasons, any post-play hook strong enough to make a difference for Stormgate will have to be one that is more fundamental and affects it across multiple, if not all the modes. Stormgate's big promise to be the most social RTS ever. Frost Giant likes to talk a lot about their aspirations of making Stormgate the most social RTS ever. It's important to remember this isn't a hook, but instead a design pillar that helps them as they add new features to the game. Think of it as a North Star for them to follow. Being more social can't be a hook, because a game can't be social if it doesn't retain players. Creep camps. Unlike StarCraft 2, Stormgate features creep camps scattered throughout the map that you can attack for bonuses. These are inspired by the creeps found in Warcraft 3, but have a slightly different gameplay role. In both games, they are a useful way to get your army and your attention away from your base and onto the map. What is different is that in Warcraft 3, they were a tool to get experience and items for your hero units. Here, they function similar to the Xel'Naga watchtowers in StarCraft 2. They're capture points that give you a specific bonus that you can compete with your opponent over. Except in Stormgate, there's also a lump sum monetary purpose to seek these points out. Because this mechanic is not featured in StarCraft 2, I can see someone making the argument that creep camps are a new hook for Stormgate. I don't think the current implementation feels hooky enough though. They're important, but they don't feel important. When you watch a match, you don't really see players fighting over the capture points much. Often, they'll be content to let their opponent just take it from them. Players are instead more interested in the lump sum of resources they gain from killing the creeps than the unique capture points those creeps guard. Because those resources are crucial to build orders, the way that creeps work right now feels more like a chore than an exciting wrinkle added to the game. I think that's the opposite of a hook. Fortunately, the team agrees with this, and are bringing changes to creep camp soon. In that same December Ask Me Anything, Tim Campbell explained how the team is looking to modify creeps.
We have a few general goals for creeps, but they basically boil down to making them more spiky and less of a chore. Make creeps be less economic focused, so that they can be more of a player choice than a requirement. Make their benefits more immediate, exciting, and varied, including tying them to map features. Reduce the number of camps on each map, so that they aren't so ever-present. Continue to refine their placement, so that they pull players towards centralized conflicts, rather than towards empty map edges.
I think that if they nail those changes, creeps can actually play a big role in giving Stormgate its hook. But they'll have to design the creeps to be really fun and really exciting. As it turns out, a big part of the hook idea that I'm going to share involves creep camps, and how to make them feel that way. So, we've seen that Frost Giant is putting a lot of work into improving Stormgate's anchors, but it still needs a hook. A hook won't come from solid anchors, and without that hook, the game can't draw players away from games that already nail those anchors. Including new and unique elements is required to make Stormgate stand out from previous Blizzard RTS entries. The game can still feel like a part of that lineage, while feeling like it's evolving beyond it. It will come as a result of establishing a design pillar that states, top to bottom, we need to build the game around an idea that isn't present in StarCraft 2 or Warcraft 3, and that idea needs to be incredibly fun. The changes that Frost Giant are making right now can be part of bringing that hook together, but they are not the hook itself. Okay, enough preamble. Let's get into my idea and why I think it's the right direction for Stormgate. Remember that this isn't going to be the thing that gets players interested in the game. That's already being accomplished by the game's pre-play hook. It's pedigree. It's instead meant to be the thing that keeps players coming back because it's so fun and fresh, and what will be the thing that encourages positive word of mouth. So, what is this proposed hook?
What in God's name have we done?
I've boiled it down to a couple sentences. To encourage improvisation and strategic thinking in players, maps should be dynamic battlegrounds that bring them into conflict with their opponent over points of interest. These battlegrounds will morph and change as a result of those conflicts, offering new strategies and tactics over the course of a match. An oft overlooked part of the evolution of Blizzard RTS is the evolution of multiplayer map design. All the fighting in Warcraft Orcs and Humans took place on a flat plane. Warcraft 2 then introduced water, bringing naval combat and sections of the map you couldn't traverse without it. StarCraft brought the fighting to new levels, with cliffs and ramps. Warcraft 3 introduced 3D terrain, shallow water, creeps, and neutral structures. These map design improvements were a part of making each game feel like a huge step forward from the last. You might say they were a crucial aspect to the gameplay hooks of each entry. On the other hand, the major advancement of StarCraft 2 multiplayer design was never any new map mechanic. Its major step forward was esports. Every aspect of the game was meticulously crafted to court the massive Korean Brood War scene, and expand that to the rest of the world. This includes map design. By every metric, this was a successful effort. StarCraft 2 basically created esports. However, a focus on esports was a double-edged sword for the game. One of the drawbacks that has plagued the game to this day is that map pools can be somewhat monotonous. They tend to favor macro-focused maps with maybe one gimmick to keep a map from being a total copy-paste of previous designs. Melee map designers were really limited in the ways that could make maps dynamic due to the rules and expectations of the competitive scene. This was true in spite of StarCraft 2 having the most powerful and robust trigger system ever. The sorts of maps that could be designed were a far cry from the sorts of maps that were allowed to be designed. I think most players, even professional ones, would agree that maps could stand to be a little more interesting than they were in StarCraft 2. If Stormgate took a much more bold approach to map design, that would be a huge factor in making it feel like a real advancement from the previous game. Imagine being able to trigger events on the map, like raising a drawbridge, thus cutting off a route in the map, or enabling specific creep camps, or even replenishing resources in an expansion. Maps would still be carefully curated for their competitiveness. They would simply be allowed to have more fun ideas involved. They would be living things that change based on the actions of the players, all enabled through the trigger system that already exists in the game. You can pair these new dynamic maps with compelling creep changes, and allow the creeps to change the map and vice versa. You can actually place creeps so that they feel more tied into the map itself, and not simply random spots to bring your army to. And you can design new types of creeps that encourage players to fight over specific points of interest. Finally, to promote engagement with these systems, we would need to create a new incentive for going after creeps and unique map elements. I have a pretty cool idea for this too. So the hook has 3 parts: objective-based map design, creep camps worth defending, and exciting rewards. Together, they'll create the most engaging multiplayer map design in RTS history, and one part without the rest would result in something much less rich. Alongside this video, I'm releasing posts in the Stormgate Discord channel feedback forum that will cover these parts in much greater detail. Maybe too much, but I'll give you an overview here, courtesy of a proof of concept 1v1 map I designed in StarCraft 2's map editor called Fort Nokitoff.
This head-to-head map takes place at a military base that was established at the highest elevation point of a city, until the city flooded during the Brink. Now it's become a beachhead for you as you fight for control of its powerful weaponry. Luminite nodes and Therium ore support 9 bases that you must compete with your opponent for. One of those bases contains rich deposits of Luminite and Therium, making it extra valuable. But not only does its central position between you and the opponent make attempting to secure it a risky play, it's also being guarded fiercely by a powerful Resource Guardian camp drawn to its energy output. Major Galt's forces have established camps all over the territory surrounding Fort Nokitoff. These marauder camps are hostile and will attack anybody that ventures too near them. However, Galt has outfitted his men with Sigma tech. If you can eliminate them, you can take the equipment for yourself and outfit your forces with it. This could give you the upper hand against your opponent. Occasionally, the scavengers in Fort Nokitoff will send scouts from the scout barracks to fortify marauder camps. If scouts find an empty marauder camp, they'll occupy it. That will level up the camp, making it harder to defeat. On the other hand, this leveled up camp will come with even more powerful equipment. You'll have a choice to make. You could allow these camps to be reinforced, or you can intercept the scouts to prevent this. There are also scavengers guarding Sigma armories. Liberating those buildings would allow you to produce better equipment to outfit your army with. Choose the equipment you want to produce and wait for it to finish. Do this with caution, because your opponent will see that the armory is active and may try to force you away before the equipment finishes. Since anybody can take the equipment once it's finished, that would just result in you paying to outfit your opponent's army. Once you've built a force strong enough, you can attempt to take on Fort Nokitoff. It is defended by a gate and turrets. Break those down and you'll have a massive force greeting you on the other side. It'll be a difficult fight, but the rewards will be worth it. Not only is there lots of equipment to be looted, Fort Nokitoff also contains a force field generator. This key structure powers a force field blocking access to the coveted Sigma V10 fabricator. Destroying the generator removes the force field, making this map's powerful fabricator available for use. But that's just when your troubles begin. Either team is now free to attempt to defeat the fabricator camp. Once you defeat the creep camp guarding it, you can use the fabricator structure to produce special units for you to add to your army. On this map, the fabricator produces V10 ion rocket launchers. These are specialized artillery that carry a single ion rocket, a missile with a payload capable of leveling massive sections of a base. The camp is guarded by Major Galt himself, but once he's defeated and the camp has been captured by a team, the fabricator begins construction. This takes a while, so a countdown will begin. During this countdown, both teams can attempt to take control of the capture point. Whichever team has control of the point at the end of the countdown gets control of the V10 when it finishes construction. Because of the devastating power of the V10 rocket launcher, both teams will want to fight tooth and nail for control. But losing the V10 isn't the end. Victory can only be achieved if your enemy surrenders or if you completely eliminate their structures from the map. Even if your opponent secures the rocket launcher, they will still need to escort it to your base. This gives you a chance to destroy it before they fire the ion rocket. The team controlling the V10 rocket launcher can move it anywhere they want and fire wherever they want within a radius of the V10, as long as they have vision of the target point. Once fired, the rocket has a large travel time before it lands. An indicator will show where and when it will make impact. While this is only a few moments, this delay gives both teams a chance to move away from the impact area before it hits. While the rocket deals enough damage to destroy pretty much anything within its radius, everything outside will remain standing. If you take a bad hit, there still may be a chance to rebuild and prepare for round 2, when the fabricator camp has come off cooldown and another V10 is up for the taking. In the end, the goal is the destruction or surrender of your opponent, however you achieve it. It's entirely possible to win without ever taking down Fort Nokitoff. You can win with 1 base or 5. You can win thanks to a sneaky drop, or with an army wielding every piece of equipment from every creep camp on the map. All that matters is that you achieve victory, whatever it takes.
Unfortunately, Fort Nokitoff is not playable at this time, since I don't know how to do all the trigger work that would be necessary to get it up and running. But maybe someday. This map is designed to show off how a 1v1 map can work when designed around our proposed hook. Let's go over a few of the unique features of this map and how they relate to the hook. The implementation is specific to this map, but the principles could be applied to all sorts of unique maps. The key thing to remember with our hook is that it's about bringing players into conflict over points of interest. Maps in Stormgate should have one or two big ideas that center gameplay around them. These should promote both strategy and improvisation. They will also encourage players to leave their base before they've been able to get a maxed out army. The bases in Fort Nokitoff are highly defensible, and one of the counters to that is the new V10 ion rocket launcher. Its power is tuned in such a way that if a player is turtling too much, the ion rocket will simply negate any work that player has put into those defenses. But to ensure the game-ending power isn't available right away, that camp is locked behind a trigger. The eponymous Fort Nokitoff is a powerful fortress that contains a key structure within it. I'm really excited by the prospect of using triggers to make competitive maps more dynamic. Still, as fun as triggers are, and as creative as they let map designers get, I also understand that there is some value in a degree of standardization. Key structures allow us to incorporate triggers into competitive maps in a structured way. By tying triggers into a specific thing you need to do, destroy a building, players can carry game knowledge from map to map and still enjoy the fruits of more dynamic map design. In Fort Nokitoff, there is one key structure, and that is the force field generator. Despite the name, destroying that key structure just activates the fabricator camp. That trigger is simple, but it has a massive effect on the state of a match because of how impactful the fabricator is on that map. I think it's a wonderful example of how these various systems can tie together to create something much greater than the sum of their parts. In my proof of concept, I have added several new types of creep camps, but the changes don't end there. I've pretty much completely revamped the creep camp system entirely. The amount of detail that goes into all these changes would not fit in the video, so here's a highlight reel. Creep camp difficulty is reworked to follow a geometric difficulty curve rather than linear, and map designers can designate any creep camp start at any difficulty level. Some camps, Marauder and Resource Guardian camps, don't respawn, so they can be a temporary presence, and then the late game can center around few more powerful camps. Creep types are decoupled from camp types. This encourages integrating the creeps into the map design. Also, instead of buffing creeps, higher difficulty camps will simply have more powerful or higher numbers of creeps. Resource bounties are lower across the board, but they scale along with camp difficulty. Camps take longer to respawn at higher difficulty levels. Again, they follow a geometric progression. Additionally, I propose a slight change to faction economy to account for creep camps giving less resources. Worker training time is decreased for all factions. Bobs will take 15 seconds to build, and imp charge cooldowns will match. Prisms will take about 25 seconds. And then there are the new creep camp types. On the one hand, you have Marauder camps and Resource Guardian camps. These are temporary and aren't meant to bring you into conflict with your opponent. They instead delay you from claiming an expansion too easily, or give you a temporary opportunity to gain equipment and resources. And then there are the new Armory and Fabricator camps. These camps are powerful, and so to gain the rewards from them, you have to put yourself at greater risk. Unlike all the camps in the current iteration, these camps require you to stay near them for an extended period of time to gain the rewards from them. Designing the camps this way encourages players to fight over them. I'll note that Fort Nokitoff also includes Health and Luminite camps, and those still work like their current iterations. So the map essentially has three distinct types of camps: temporary Marauder camps, passive Luminite camps, and active Armory camps. Knowing when to use each type and where is what will make for a well-designed map. I think it's pretty striking how well my ideas for creep camps mesh with the changes the devs want to make. The one thing about my concept that doesn't totally fit with their plans is that Fort Nokitoff doesn't have less creep camps, but more. This is because many of the creep camps are temporary, and they exist in such numbers to give players opportunities to gain equipment, which leads us to the final piece of our hook puzzle. It won't be possible to create points of interest on the map without giving players reason to go to them. One of the flaws with the current creep implementation is that camps don't succeed at this. It's worth going to them for the resource reward, but not worth continuing to fight for them. So not only does this concept include camps like the V10 Fabricator camp, those give game-altering rewards in the form of a giant nuke that you can drop on your enemy, but it's also giving players more exciting immediate rewards for going for camps in the form of equipment. Equipment are items that have special effects. These items can be picked up by any unit, and that unit will then benefit from the special effect. These effects can range from damage increases to increased health to auras that benefit units around the wielder. Any unit can hold equipment, but they can only hold one at a time. Additionally, equipment is permanent and cannot be removed. Once a unit dies, that equipment attached to them is destroyed. When attacking a creep camp, you may find that one or more of the creeps are outfitted with equipment. You can tell which by the glow effect it gives them. The creep holding the equipment will benefit from its special effect and be extra difficult to defeat, but they'll drop it when they die. Gaining that equipment is one of the major purposes of attacking creep camps. Each piece of equipment is assigned a rarity. The more rare a piece of equipment is, the more powerful the bonuses it gives are. This rarity is associated with the difficulty levels of creep camps. Because a player could have dozens of units with equipment on them, it is necessary to limit the complexity that equipment can introduce. Because of this, equipment will only ever have passive effects. That might be a stat boost, or an effect that triggers when you attack, or when you take damage, etc. I'm really excited about this feature, and have come up with several ideas for equipment already. Here are a few of them. Shoulder pads. Reduce incoming damage by 5%. Sharp steel. Ranged auto attacks deal 25% damage to units in a line behind the target. And melee auto attacks cleave, dealing 25% damage to the units next to the target. Survivor Spirit. Wielder has an aura that gives allied units in a radius around them plus 10% attack speed if the wielder is below 50% health. Holy Armor. Invulnerable for 1 second while taking damage. Effect has a 20-second cooldown. Cursed Weapon. Units that die within 1 second of taking damage from the wielder of this equipment become a zombie. Zombies attack both teams and lose 100% health over 10 seconds. Vampire Rune. Add 10% of the target's HP to your attack damage. Heal for 5% of the target's HP. Irradiated Metal. Dealing damage to a unit 3 times causes them to deal area of effect damage to all units touching them for 5 seconds. Rocket Boots. Plus 300% movement speed for 0.5 seconds when moving from a standstill. Chicken Suit. Wielder is magically transformed into the form of a chicken when moving for 3 seconds. They transform back when auto-attacking or stopping. This has no other effect. Momentous Rune. Wielder is unstoppable. They cannot be slowed, stunned, lashed, or otherwise debuffed in any way. Polymorph Rune. Polymorph a unit for 4 seconds when they take damage from Wielder. Effect has a 10-second cooldown. Sacrificial Rune. All remaining allied corpses in a radius around Wielder are resurrected when the Wielder dies. Legendary Spirit. Wielder has an aura that gives allied units in a radius around them stealth at the cost of 50% movement speed. I think that equipment is a fascinating system, and will really reward player skills. It will bring new dynamics to battles, new motivation to take creep camps, and new opportunities to make strategic choices during the course of a game. I think this is one of the major mechanics that would set Stormgate apart from its predecessors. StarCraft didn't even have items, and items only worked on heroes in Warcraft 3. I think that remembering to design the game around a powerful hook will be super critical to its success. Because I think Stormgate is so cool, and because I believe in Frost Giant's mission, I'm really invested in seeing the game succeed. That's why I wanted to share my thoughts on hooks and my ideas for a strong gameplay hook. If there's even a small chance that this persuades the devs at Frost Giant to focus their efforts around a powerful hook, then it's absolutely worth it. Additionally, I'm really proud of my efforts on Fort Nokitoff and the ideas that went into it. I think all those ideas would serve the game really well. Fort Nokitoff is a 1v1 map, but this hook could be brought into all the game modes. Equipment would naturally fit in co-op and Team Mayhem. There's already an item system in the campaign. These more focused maps with more interesting creep camps will benefit Stormgate at every level. If Frost Giant decides not to go in this direction, my intention is to turn this into a proper custom map as soon as I get the chance. But I think they should go in this direction. I've shown how it's already totally aligned with some of the ideas they have for improving 1v1, and it would bring such new and exciting elements to the game. I hope they agree. If you're interested in more details on the Fort Nokitoff concept, check out the posts that I've made in the Stormgate Discord feedback channel. I'll leave links to those in the description below. Finally, I intend to post more about Stormgate and my other interests on this channel. I might even dig into Fort Nokitoff some more, and really do a deep dive on the concept in a future video. If you've enjoyed what I have to say, I encourage you to subscribe so you can be notified when my next video comes out. Until next time.